very large number of years, like 5 or 6 years now. I think my first version was 3.0, and I have worked with every version since then. And I used to work for a partner where I developed a large number of custom solutions using Kentico, and I've deployed it in about every way that I think you can. My particular specialty is more probably in the cloud high availability space, but I've used a lot of areas of the product, and I've done a lot of different things with it. So when HiMonkey asked me to do this particular user group webinar, I was actually pretty interested in it because, if you haven't heard, we just released version 9 about two or 3 weeks ago, and it's a really big release, and it has a lot of really exciting features in it. I would say on average, the majority are probably a little bit more developer focused in version 9, but there are some that are non-technical as well. And so in this particular webinar, I'm going to try to go through some of those major features and show you some examples of how you can leverage them within your applications and stuff like that. So as just a rough example, I'll just kind of talk about where web content management systems kind of fit in this digital transformation that's kind of happening across all industries and everywhere in the world. And really, what are the main goals we were trying to achieve from a product standpoint with version 9, and what are the features that actually helped us achieve those goals? And then I'll provide you some links and stuff to show you more. And again, I'll try to show some working examples and some demo code and some demo projects and stuff of each of those major features, along with a couple other little tidbits that I found in the new version that I think that you'll like. So basically, the first part of the question is how do we get here? Like, what is this digital transformation and what's really happening? And really what you have is you have a lot of new technology that's coming out, whether it's hardware or software or something in between, or a new social network, or whatever it is. There's a lot of new technology that's emerging almost on an hourly basis. I was even going to say daily, but I think it's more hourly if you watch anything on Twitter or any other sort of tech forum site or something. There's always some new programming library release. There's always a new social media application. So a lot of new development, and it's really this exponential growth of innovation and technology, and companies just always come up with some new awesome idea. Combine that, and that's really the stepping stone, and there's a lot of new ways to do business. There's obviously virtual currencies like Bitcoin and whoever Bitcoin's competitors are. I don't really know of any others. I just know Bitcoin. And that's really kind of changing how business is being done, and it's not necessarily just in the virtual currency world, but really how companies are interacting with each other, how they integrate with each other, the partnerships, the synergies that kind of get created. It's this brand new economy, and it really transcends really every vertical and every market. It should, except for these old legacy ones that still work on mainframes and things like that. But almost every new or emerging business has this new economy impact to them. And the last thing that's really compounding, and probably the most significant and prevalent of all these, is an empowered user. Obviously, it's not a secret that people are much more informed than they were, say, 5, 10, or 15 years ago. When they come into a site or a store or something, it's very uncommon to find someone that has no idea about the company or what they do or what the product is. Most likely they've already searched everything, they've known everything, they've communicated with everyone they know on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else. They've already empowered themselves with knowledge, and they expect an experience that's going to be catered to someone that has that knowledge already. So all of those combined are really transforming every industry into a more digitally focused experience and environment. So the role of a web content management system in that digital transformation. So you really have this digital experience that is all about connecting the company to the user. In, let's say, a B2C or even a B2B experience, it's still all about this digital, highway that you're obviously transferring information back and forth, whether that's a product, whether it's a service, whether they just want to give you money because they like you, or from Kickstarter. It's still this digital experience. So that really comes into content and how that content is relayed, and that's really where the web content management systems they're basically the foundation for that digital experience. And this is really nothing new. This is what has always been the case. It's just a little bit more prevalent now because more and more things are starting to be integrated and more technologies are emerging. The web content management system is really becoming the hub of this digital experience because it's what's integrating in with these back-end systems like ERPs and CRMs and Microsoft Dynamics and Salesforce. It's also the platform in which companies are leveraging that data to automate many features of their marketing, whether that's automated emails or newsletter signups or lead scoring. Those are all taking place within the web content management system. And throw in the Internet of Things, and that's all working back through. So the data that all these connected devices are pushing out can be consumed by a web content management system, and that data and the knowledge that that data contains gets melded in with the rest of this digital experience. So it's a really holistic view of how a user, is interacting with the company, with the product that they provide, with the service they provide, because all that data is being tracked back. It's all being maintained within a content management system like Kentico, and it's a company's using that data to learn more about the user and provide a more personalized and customized experience. So the 4 goals for version 9 that we really kind of came down to, or pillars or goals, whatever you want to call them, is 1, we needed a way to have a consistent experience for people that would be tailored to the channel in which they're interacting with that data, which if you think of the web content management system as the repository of information, one of those channels would be the website, which goes and looks at the information via a web. Another may be a mobile application. It may be an IoT device that's getting the data. Whatever it is, we needed this consistent way to deliver this experience for whatever way that that user is interacting with it. The second goal is companies are more and more needing an agile approach to their development, to their projects, to their applications. They have to be able to change and adapt to their users' needs and market trends and needs, and they really need a platform that allows them that agility and the ability to develop very quickly, very easily, and kind of change focus, and more importantly, reuse that development in other areas of their application very quickly if they need to. The third, obviously, as more information is propagated and more functionality is there, the ability for people to consume that information is exponentially increased. And that creates a very unpredictable and volatile traffic to your company's website or the data that you're providing. Couple that with focused marketing campaigns during particular times of the year or season, and you really have this very fluctuating traffic that will be coming in and out of your organization. We needed a solution that would be able to accommodate that fluctuation and provide a stable, self-maintaining system that reduces the administration of it, so that's one less thing that a business has to worry about. Is the application going to scale appropriately, and are we going to be able to handle this increase or decrease in traffic automatically without really any administration or maintenance on an IT admin side? And the fourth, probably one of the biggest things, is really we recognize that people really, they're starting to use systems like our enterprise marketing suite, and what that really does is that gets a lot of data. Like the EMS package, it really is all about collecting a lot of data, and it's up to the company implementing the application as to how that data is collected. It could be in the form of lead scoring or customer accounts or contacts or combinations of the two, or web analytics, but really it's just a lot of data. So we recognized that people needed to understand that data better. So with Kentico 9, one of our goals was to simplify the process that a marketing or a business user would go through to initiate and start and finish a campaign, some marketing effort that's targeted information at a specific number of people with some desired result. And then we wanted them to be able to see the results of that campaign and understand it a lot easier. So that was the major fourth goal that we had with version 9. So as we went forward, we're going to break down into each one of these, and you'll see how they kind of align with the different pieces. So if we go back to the first one, this consistent customer experience for any channel, that's really where ASP.NET MVC Support comes into. And I'll try to keep some of this information technical and some non-technical, so if this is too technical, just kind of hang out for a little bit, and I promise I'll get to some non-technical stuff. But every developer wants to do MVC. I've done web forms for a very long time. I have about 16 years of doing web forms. I can't say I'm necessarily in the MVC bandwagon 100%. It's kind of a step back for me in some ways, but I do recognize it is a very popular technology, and it's really what developers are wanting to use and what they're wanting to learn. What that means to business is your development departments most likely want to do MVC, and it's a lot easier for you to find talent that knows MVC as opposed to something like, let's say, .NET Web Forms, which is what I've been doing for 16 years. And so if you want to find new talent, you definitely need to start thinking about whether or not you want to develop your application in MVC. It's funny because the Node is the latest technology. It was actually introduced in 1979, but it has just slowly gained popularity over the years, but an explosion of that obviously in the last year or two. But from a technical standpoint, it offers a lot of flexibility and mobility of your code. And what that means is you can put data inside of your application and then extract it out a lot easier. So our Kentico 9 MVC support. Now, Kentico's supported MVC for many, many versions. I think all the way back to version 4.1 or maybe 5.0, we had MVC support. And after we had one kind of solution, we used it for a little while, we recognized it probably wasn't the best solution, so we made a new one. And we kind of found the same thing about that one. So in version 9, we completely rewrote all of the MVC support to build us a much better foundation. So we kind of learned from the previous two implementations. So this third one, and what I kind of perceive as the last one because of just from what I understand about it and how I understand it kind of lays the foundation, it gives a lot more control over things. So we rewrote parts of our API, and we allowed you to get the data out much easier. You can use caching, all these different kinds of things. But with MVC, you also have that full control over the layout of it, which is, from a developer's perspective, this is where I have a difficult time transitioning to MVC because I'm like, developers shouldn't be involved in layout. If you're a back-end developer like me, I probably am not the best designer. But with MVC, that's really part of the model, and it's really all about giving control over every aspect of it. And when you have that control, you can start reusing code that you have much easier with the MVC model, which is overall going to reduce the amount of time you're spending developing and the costs that are associated with it. So with that, I'm going to kind of show you some of our MVC example stuff. So in my environment, I have a basic site, and this is actually an MVC site, and it is actually part of our demo. We actually have this downloadable, this entire application. We open source it. It's on GitHub, completely downloadable. You can knock yourself out. From a code standpoint, this is what the project looks like. So it's a pretty basic project. We have a couple controllers, a number of views and articles, and what we're doing is we're showing you how to integrate in this basic functionality for MVC support in your site. And I'm not really going to dig into this code tremendously. I just wanted you at least to be aware that it's there. And from a very technical standpoint, know that the biggest piece about this is we have an MVC NuGet package that you can pull in your applications, which gives you all the CMS API functionality. So then you can get things like the object query and caching and all those sorts of things. They all just come with whenever you get those NuGet packages. Then if you want to interact with the actual objects that you're dealing with, you pull in the classes that are created when you make a new page type or something. Like an article page type, this is the generated class that happens inside of your Kentico site. You just pull those classes into your MVC application, and then that way the MVC site knows how to work with it, which is how it knows what this article object right here is, because I pulled in the article generated class. So again, I'm not going to dig into this a ton. This is all downloadable. We have tons of information on it, so I'll kind of let you dig into that on your own. But just know, behind the scenes, this is a completely standalone application from the base Kentico site, which is, I'll show you here in a moment, it just has the same connection string. So it hits the same database, and it uses the Kentico APIs to get data out and display it within the application. So you can see we have like articles and about us page, really kind of basic information, but there is some functionality defined in here, how to work with a form, how to get the data, and things like that. On the other end of it is a Kentico site. So this is a Kentico site that's running, and it's not an MVC site. It's actually a web form site. So this is just a standard Kentico installation. And in this particular case, I actually have two sites in the same installation because I use them for different demo purposes. But this is the MVC site. So just so you can kind of see what that looks like, this is the Kentico MVC site. And then inside of this site, you'll see it has a different kind of structure than what you were probably used to. So this is the data structure. So what you would do is you would stand up Kentico as a development standpoint, and you would create a site that contains what we refer to as content-only page types. And then you create your MVC site, and it will use the API to get that data out. But your content editors or your business users will come into here, and they'll interact with it just like they're used to within a normal Kentico application. So we have different page types, but if you go into the page types, you'll see that actually want a different one. Yeah, this one. So it's a nice form-based thing. There's no design tab, and there's no page tab, because this is a content-only thing. So the intent is you use Kentico to manage your data, so you still get workflow. You can use all the complex object types of text and HTML and referenced images, related articles, all that kind of stuff. And they have a nice form-based thing to enter that content. And then when you change it, so in this case, I have this article right here. There will be this Coffees Explained. So this is a nice article, so that correlates to, there's the title, the referenced images, and all the other information that you want to know about coffee beverages. It's all contained right here. So if I wanted to update this article, and maybe I just drank a lot of coffee, and now I'm all hopped up, so I just want to put a bunch of exclamation points. If I come over here, it's actually cached right now, so I'm going to give it a few minutes. I'll try to force it. But maybe if I jump back over to the home page, you can see, because it's actually pulling that in. So the MVC side, all the layout is all handled by the developer, but it's already here. But the end user still can just use the standard Kentico interface to come in and change this information as they need to. And again, it's hooked into the workflow, so you can have approvals and whatever else you want. You can define your own page types. You can throw in your own little nice images like we do in our demos, and you can kind of work with that. Again, this demo site, along with the actual MVC application, is all part of that download package which we have in GitHub, which I have a link at the end of this webinar where I'll show you where to get that if you want to download it. But you can download the whole thing and check it out, and if you really want to, you can contribute to it and help us even make the demo site even better. Things to know about MVC that aren't quite there yet. So as I said, we are going back to like this new foundation for our MVC. So it does not support everything at this point in time. It still does not support e-commerce. It does not support online marketing yet. But we had to build a new foundation. So that's really what we started with. So this nice solid foundation, and then this methodology and paradigm of how you can incorporate the APIs and this custom code into your MVC application, but still leverage a lot of the features inside of Kentico. Now that we have that foundation, we most certainly are actively working on right now delivering the e-commerce and online marketing capabilities of the in an MVC project as well. So that is coming, but we had to kind of lay this groundwork first. But because MVC is such a far-reaching thing, it touches every bit of our application. So this new support, it required a lot of development on our behalf, and it required every team within inside of Kentico, the online team, the online marketing team, the content management team the most, because this is really where it falls under, the platform team. Everybody had to do development to supply this MVC support, and because of that, we just didn't have enough time before we needed to release version 9 to get all those in there, but we're actively working on that now. So, and I will say this too, Bryan, if I don't see the questions, but if someone does have questions, please let me know, and I'll be glad to talk about any questions that we have going along, or we can save them to the end. I wasn't sure how you normally do these webinars, so if anyone does have any questions, feel free to pipe in, and I'll be glad to address them as I go. All right. So the next main goal was adopting this agile approach. So with that, the MVC actually has a big piece to play in that. But another thing is we needed to be able to allow companies to develop in a very predictable and a very structured manner with using very disciplined methodologies of how they write code, how they test that code, how they move code from one to the other. And that's where we introduced continuous integration, which this is one of our favorite features, and largely because we're not aware of anyone having any other solution like this. And we're really proud of that, and it's not perfect. It does a lot, but this is just like the MVC support. We're continuing to work with this and add more features to it. But the continuous integration is all about helping enterprise teams, departments with very structured methodologies of test automation, deployment, tracking, source control. It provides a system for them to use Kentico and use continuous integration so that a developer in one environment can make a change to, let's say, a page type or a transformation or something, check that in, or they serialize it using continuous integration, check it into their source control, then another developer can just hit that source control, pull everything down. They don't necessarily have to use a shared database, or it could be not even two developers. It could be developer checks in his changes, and then whoever's in charge of the builds, they pull down the latest version, they apply it to their QA environment, they run the continuous integration to integrate in all the new changes, and then they test it, and then maybe they do it again within the production environment. So with this continuous integration support, it allows for these very quick, very defined deployments, and it allows you to move code and changes from one environment to the other in a much more structured environment. Prior to this, you had import-export, you had copying a database and changing some URLs. This is much more aligned with how enterprise projects are developed and how those companies maintain their information. It does provide the ability to roll back changes, but more importantly, it provides the functionality to say, look, this is a change with a collision, which one do you want to win, because there's two developers both changed this same object, this same web part, or this same page template. Which one, how do you want to merge these changes? Do you want to take this one over that one? And with this new functionality, you can integrate this in with source control. So I'm going to show you just what that kind of looks like from a functional standpoint. So I'm going to jump over to my standard Kentico site, and inside of here, I'm going to go to the continuous integration. Again, I'm not going to dig into this too much because we have a lot of information on it, and I know that not all of our audience may necessarily be very technical, but I still want at least you get an idea to see how it works. So really the thing you need to do first is you just enable continuous integration. And once you enable continuous integration, what you tell it to do is serialize all the objects. So that's going to take a few minutes, but while it's going, I want to pull over the actual project. So this is the project of the site I'm working in, and when I click that, I get this CI repository. This is the continuous integration repository. So what this is doing is it's going through every object, and it's starting to serialize it into these files. So if I dig into one thing in particular, so the Dancing Goat site, I'm going to dig into, let's say, a user role, and what it's gone through, it's done is it's serialized every bit of that information that's inside of there, what the bronze partner is, the code, and everything. So what you can do with this then is as a change is made, you can actually, it will constantly watch this. So if I were to go in and change the silver partner object within Kentico, it's going to change this XML file behind the scenes. So it's the continuous integration constantly runs. It's constantly watching as these objects change. And as this changes, it will update this XML file. So with that, I can check in these files into some source control, so another developer can come in, pull them down, and then there's an exe file that you can run within your application to then I think it's in this global. Actually, I can't remember exactly where it is. It's in there somewhere. But there's an exe file that you run that then reads through all those XML files and incorporates them into your application wherever your data source is connected to. So it's constantly watching, so it's constantly maintaining any changes that are happening, and then through a very defined and structured development process, as a developer makes a change to an object, the XML file will get updated, then they physically check in those files to some source control. Your other developer will pull those down, run the exe, which incorporates all the changes into their environment, and now you're able to move these changes from one environment very quickly to another one. You can also take this functionality and use it to do like an automated deploy to using, say, something like TeamCity or Jenkins, or a combination of these other systems to automate your deployments from one environment to another. And we actually have a developer in the community, Michael Kincaid, who works for Centric Arts. He actually put together a really nice video of kind of walking you through a demo implementation of using this continuous integration with TeamCity and doing this deployment that I'll show you the link to that at the end of the webinar as well. So we already have some people out there putting out some really good information on how to leverage this, but this is really just the foundation for companies to use, for developers to use. It's really up to you of how you want to incorporate it into your development methodology, whether it's you just want to use it for source control, you want to use it for automation, you want to use it for testing. We just kind of give you the core components, and then you can choose how you want to integrate it or how you don't. Just know you would not want to leave it on in your production site, because you're putting a lot of work on the server. As things changes, it's constantly going to be recording those changes into the continuous integration file, so you would definitely not want to have that on your production site. So, all right, so that's continuous integration. Again, it's a pretty big feature that we're pretty stoked about because it does a lot of stuff. The third one, it's all about matching these demands of the traffic as it fluctuates. So we recognize as more and more companies deploy to the cloud, whether that's Azure or Amazon, that's really an environment where hardware becomes less of a topic of discussion. It's really all just about performance and information. And that's really the way it should be when you deploy to the cloud. You really shouldn't have to worry about the hardware. It should just be set up so that it scales appropriately when you get a lot of traffic, and it scales back down when you don't. In previous implementations at Kentico, that scaling and the registration of your web farms really had a couple things that made it difficult for some companies to implement successfully, and that was it often had manual registration of these web farms, so you had to have in-depth knowledge of the internal IPs of the web farm. Sometimes you have to have different files on each server so that they could recognize one from the other. But more importantly is when there was an issue in that web farm, Kentico really didn't really know how to handle it. So you dealt with situations of if one of your web farm servers was not available, then you have a bunch of tasks that it's trying to sync to it, which fills up your event log with 1 billion records, and then that causes issues all over your site. So we recognize there's a lot of areas that we could improve on that with version 9. So what we came up with is rule-based scaling that is really optimized for Amazon or Azure or some other cloud implementation. And the main important thing is it monitors itself and it fixes itself when there's an issue. So what this means for non-technical users is, again, this is a little bit more of a technical topic, much like the last two, but for non-technical users, just know that Kentico 9 has a lot of features built into it so that it from an application level will handle your fluctuating traffic patterns, handle your increased user load when you do some particular marketing activity, and from an application standpoint, it should respond, it should maintain itself in the environment that it's in, sync everything appropriately, and then when that traffic dies back down, it will start to remove unnecessary servers, and then it will make sure everything stays in sync with each other. So just as a quick demo of what this kind of looks like if you want to see it. So I'm just running this site locally, but I don't have web farms enabled at the moment. So now we have a couple different options of automatic or manual. You can still do manual if that's really what you're into and you want to do that. You still can define your own manual web farm, registrations and kind of how you manage information. But we also have this automatic setting. And what's really nice about that is as soon as you enable that setting, if I come over into the web farm application, you'll see it's actually going to be registering a new web farm server because it knows I'm running it on the server. So it knows as soon as you enable web farms, it automatically knows how many servers are hitting it. And once it gets a new server that's hitting it, it goes into what's called this transitioning phase, which basically that's Kentico watching itself to see, is this server good? Is it what we want to have running? Is it operating properly? And then in a few minutes, that's going to switch over and it's going to say healthy, which means this server is now inside of the mix and we're going to start syncing changes to it. When you have a server that goes down for some reason, or maybe you take it down, it will go through this process, but in the other order. It will say, okay, this one must be transitioning because I can't talk to it. If more than 3 minutes go by, it goes, okay, this is now unhealthy. I'm going to remove this server from the web farm synchronization processes inside of Kentico until it comes back to life and I know that it's still good. So that way you're not going to pile up these tasks and cause a lot of issues in regards to syncing content across your web farm servers. It will automatically handle that for you. This really plays in nicely if you're using something like Azure, and if you have a particular web app inside of Azure that you want to scale out. So this is the Azure administration portal here, and I clicked the wrong thing, so let me go back into the right thing over here. Yeah, and so in this particular environment, you can scale out very easily with a few clicks. And so if I jump over to, if I can remember which one I'm working with, there we go. So inside of here, this is, oh, no, I just stopped that. Let's one more time. Maybe I can get it to go in there. So inside of here, if I needed to scale this one up or down, I can very quickly come into my scaling environment and I can tell it, you know, have more servers, scale up 1 or 2, and do some different things in regards to in regards to how it's going to react to a specific environment, and that keeps the hardware in check. So the web farm synchronization side of Kentico will then keep the application in check. And this is Amazon AWS, and you have some opportunities to scale out your servers inside of there as well. Regardless of what the environment is, Kentico is designed to recognize, hey, this server's been added to the mix for whatever process that resulted in that, whether it's your scaling inside of Amazon or it's your Azure's configured to scale up if your CPU gets over 80%. It just, Kentico knows there's a new server here, so let me go ahead and bring it into the mix, let me register it, and then let me start syncing tasks to it. And then when that server goes away, for maybe you took it down for maintenance or your traffic dropped down, Kentico will automatically recognize that and take that server out of the mix so that it keeps everything running a lot smoother, and you're able to really rely on your application to perform well regardless of the environment that it's running in. Again, we have a number of kind of videos and blogs where we kind of break this down a lot. I'm not going to dig much more into it from a technical perspective, but just know that we have a lot of documentation and some webinars about it. So the fourth major thing that we really wanted to address in Kentico is this data. So now we're going to get into a less technical topic, but a more functional and marketing focused topic. And it was really, we needed to make sure that people could collect data effectively and understand the data that they're collecting so that they can make informed decisions about it, and that they can use this data to understand, oh, this was an effective marketing effort, this one was not, we're seeing traffic in this particular industry or from this channel, we're not seeing as much over here. So with that data, they can better focus their efforts, whether they're marketing or business related or technical related, into the appropriate channels and understand the information a lot better. So with that, we have what's called the integrated campaign management, and it's really designed for this new evolution of marketers and how they're using data. And what it comprises is the management of the campaigns, these marketing efforts that they want to execute, and then seeing that data and understanding it. And to help you understand that, we have new reports, a new reporting engine that helps you visualize this data a lot better, which obviously everybody loves looking at images much more than a bunch of text. So this new reporting engine is really designed around providing usable, easy to look at, easy to understand visual representations of the data as opposed to just endless lines on a spreadsheet. But the biggest thing that's, and one of the most important, this entire integrated campaign management is already a part of the core Kentico modules. It's already integrated into all the systems that are there. So to show you what this looks like, I have back to my sample site, which is, let me come back to here. It's actually in the other one, so let me jump back over to that. So inside of here, under our online marketing, we have something called a campaign now. Well, the campaigns were there, but now we have a new way to look at this, and I can see already that it is not on the right site. So let me jump back over and fix that. So now we're on the right site. So these are some sample campaigns that we already have, but just at first glance, we've already redesigned how this page looks. And so I can very quickly see all the marketing efforts that have been going on. I have a cafe promotion, which was launched on December 9th. I have this one, which has started, but we haven't actually launched it yet. And we have this one that we did, and it's already completed. And with each one, I can very quickly see the number of visitors, number of conversions, and the conversion rate. If I drill down into this a little bit more, you can see, here's the pretty graphs coming into play, is that we show you the information, when it started, when it ended. This is a description, which I highly recommend you use so that you can understand what our efforts are. And then, are there any, what are the different channels of this particular campaign? What are the conversions of each one of those? So we can see, we have 100% are, from Colombia. They all hit the Colombia page. So the idea is you would start a campaign with maybe a landing page, and you would put a UTM for your link so that you know that this is going to this landing page, but it came from Facebook, and this one came from Twitter, and this one came from the email. So with those UTMs and the landing page, you can see that we know that we had 100% of the people, it was effective. So this is a pretty good campaign if 100% of the people actually clicked the link. And then we know that 56 of them, or 15%, got to the thank you page. So we know that they hit the landing page and they did something. And then 4%, they actually wanted this coffee poster. So if I look at the properties of this particular campaign, you can see where this is broken down. We have an email campaign that was sent out, and we had the UTM of the promotion. And then for the campaign itself, we tracked page visits on the Columbia page, we tracked them on the thank you page, and we tracked them on the poster request page. So I can't change this because this one's already done, so I'll go back into one that is actually in process so you can see how these are different for different channels. But I at least wanted you to see how we kind of piece this together. So this one campaign management is bringing in email campaigns, it's bringing in landing pages, and with those pages are page visits and conversions, and there's a form on there, so we're tracking how many people did that. So when I look at the overall thing, I can see a nice graphical representation. Because this campaign had an email component to it, you actually can drill right into that email report to see what the results of that email campaign was. So this email campaign was only part of the whole overriding campaign, but for the email, we know that 4 were sent at 100% delivery. We had 25% open, so only one person opened it, and unfortunately they didn't click any links. But right from this one page, you can very quickly understand how effective was this email. What was the reach? What was the engagement? How many people did we lose out of it? How many people unsubscribed from it? And what are the clicks-throughs that happened with it? And then this is that UTM that I mentioned, that's how we know, because the links in the email campaign contain a specific UTM that told us all that traffic was coming from the email. So if I jump back into the campaigns, I want to show you how you can kind of define those. So I'm going to go to the one in progress because I think it has a few things defined. It does. So in here, this is where you can actually start changing information about it. So if I wanted to link the campaign to a specific source, I can, and the medium, and then the medium is really just a notifier for you, and then the link that would actually be the link with the UTM inside. And this is how you can start tracking this user activity from multiple channels. And once you're ready, once you put in all your information, then you launch that campaign, it's ready to go. So from this utility, you can see one that was already done, one that we're still working on, and one that's actually going now. And with that, you still get the results of it, but this one's actively still happening, so you just know which ones to look at. So that's the kind of campaign management in general. But in addition to that, we enhance the email side of this because emails are such a large part of campaigns. We have a new feature inside of here to see like an opt-out list. So once you come in here, you can see anybody that has chosen to opt out from all of your communication. You can very quickly see it inside of this report and understand, okay, this person doesn't really want to get any emails marketing from any point, so don't send them something unless you really want to get some hate mail or something like that. So it's just a new report that we have for marketers to use so that they can understand who they should not be communicating to. Is there a comment, Brian, or just checking?
There's just one question, but we'll wait till the end and we can kind of just answer it as we go.
Okay. Again, inside of the email area, you can see all of your email campaigns. If you want to see them all in a one nice report view, you can check out, what's delivery rate, the open rate. So it's a really nice way to visualize this information and work with it. So, so that's really the integrated campaign management and how we're trying to help you tie that together. So in version 9, we brought in this new functionality and we kind of worked it into all the core areas of the website. What you're going to find is we further develop Kentico is this integrated campaign management is going to get even better. It's going to visualize even more data. The data is going to be extractable from more areas of the application, and you're going to be able to tie this together. And really, the site's really good at collecting data. The EMS is really good at collecting data. Just ask anybody that's running Kentico in an enterprise environment, and they'll probably grown of the amount of contact activity that they have because it just can track just about everything someone does. But with that data, it comes a lot of storage because it's one of those things. Like you want a lot of data, but it comes at a cost of you're going to have a lot of data. So it's often difficult to understand that data and understand how it pieces together. This feature, version 9, is really aimed at helping you understand that data better because as we have more and more companies adopt the EMS functionality and more of these marketing automation and capabilities of the system, they need to understand, I mean, it's not just one thing to understand, I'm going to do a campaign. You really need to know how effective was that campaign, because if it wasn't effective and you do it again, you're just wasting your time. You need to is really geared at. So, as I said, there's a lot of information, a lot of parts to Kentico 9, and we recognize that a lot of people would have a lot of questions. So one thing we did differently this year in the past is we have these webinars, and we just finished up the last one yesterday, which has already been posted to our YouTube channel. So on our YouTube channel, you'll see that we have, let's see if I can remember where that is. Sorry, give me just a second to open that up. So they're all posted up here on the Kentico YouTube channel, and they're about an hour long. And we basically break down, so you can see them are all up here at the top because they're all the most recent ones. But we have an intro to Kentico 9. Actually, this is a different video. This is the main video. This is one we did a few weeks ago. But this is the Kentico 9 introduction webinar. We have one just focused on continuous integration where Mikhail Kadek, who is the product owner for our platform team, which also owns continuous integration, he breaks down the continuous integration concept much more in depth, shows you examples, shows you that EXE of where you can look at the changes and incorporate them in. Then we have one just focused on MVC, where David Komarek and Radek Pribble, who David is the product owner for the content management, which is where MVC falls under for Kentico, and Radek is the technical lead on the content management team, and they break down that demo site, show you the code of this is pulling in using the API, this is how we pull in that data, this is how you can interact with it. We have Martin McCalloch, who is our product owner for online marketing. He did a webinar that's just focused on that integrated campaign management. He basically walks you through setting up a campaign, setting up the email for it, setting up the UTMs, and then going through some testing of it, of where you click the link and then see it and then understand the results. And then our most recent webinar, Karol Yarkowski, who is our director of product but actually used to be our cloud product owner, he breaks down this new web farm support, kind of shows you it in action, shows you when you had what you see when you had a new web farm, when it gets taken away, when he really breaks down the technical specifics as to when these web farm servers are created and when they're kind of moved away. So these are all really great. Again, you can find them under the Kentico YouTube channel. The next thing I definitely want you to know about was the MVC project on GitHub. So the project that I demonstrated, it's completely open sourced and it's available for you to download on GitHub, and you can download it. There's a walkthrough, there's a license, there is a README which kind of walks you through exactly how to set up everything, and everything you need is included in here. So I highly encourage developers to go check this out. You can see some of our best practices of how we think the best way to interact with Kentico in an MVC environment is, but more importantly, because it's open source, we would love to have contributors to this project. So if you can see an area that we can improve, definitely use the GitHub capabilities to send us a new branch and contribute to the product, and we would absolutely love that because it will just help us make the overall product even better. The next one I wanted to let you know about was a YouTube video, again, that Michael Kincaid did. I'm not going to run the video, but you can just see it here. And he basically walks through Kentico continuous integration with TeamCity. Now, it's a little bit more of an explorative webinar, so I don't know how 100% usable this solution is, but he's kind of feeling it out, but he has a lot of experience with TeamCity and this kind of really structured enterprise development concepts, and it's a really informative webinar that I think a lot of people get a lot of information out because it helps you visualize and understand how the continuous integration can really work within an environment and within a development department. And lastly, it's the documentation. So we've updated all of our documentation for Kentico 9. Inside of here, you'll find specific pages for MVC development. You can see we actually put links at the very top because these are some of the updated features. So one thing I did want to know about, if you've done development with Kentico in the past, we used to have the API examples as part of the project. So if you wanted them, you actually had to do an install. During your install, you had to choose the API examples. We have since extracted those out, and we put them all within our documentation here, which is really nice because now you don't have to put them in your project. But more importantly, what's nice is as this functionality changes, we can come in and update it here very quickly. You don't have the benefit of having this run if you wanted to actually see the result within your application, but this kind of paradigm does allow us to update these much quicker and kind of propagate new functionality out a lot easier. Okay, so now I wanted to show you just a couple other cooler things that I've kind of found within the application that I think might come in very helpful to people. The first one is about web parts. So whether you're on the technical side or the non-technical side, if you're not in technical, this still affects you, and that is a particular web part. Maybe it's a custom functionality that your development department created to do something, but now there needs to be a change in that. But it's used all over the site. So any change to it, you have to go in and set this new property for it everywhere. So with version 9, we created the ability to see that a lot better. So if I were to come into somewhere like a, let's see, like a universal viewer or something, now it has a usage tab. So if I click that usage tab, that was probably a bad one because it's not used anywhere. I can now see everywhere within the site a web part is used. So I know it's on this page template, this one, this one, this one. So a developer can use this if they want to. They can export this list to Excel or something so that they can go in and update all the appropriate areas for a web part. They can quickly see where those are needing to be changed at. So this is a big feature from a development perspective because it's going to save them a lot of time rooting around through the site. For non-technical users, it's going to save your developers a lot of time, so hopefully you'll get your change implemented much faster. So that's a pretty cool feature that I want you to know about. The next one, again, you have to apologize. I am a technical evangelist, so naturally my mind goes to very technical things whenever I'm talking. Whenever you're using an application and you have a CDN, whenever you put something in the CDN, if you don't specify it, it will live in the CDN. So the file, regardless of whether or not you change it on your local machine, it will stay in the CDN for up to 72 hours if you're dealing with Azure, and I'm not sure what Amazon's is. But now you can override how long it lives in the CDN. So this cache files in minutes actually will set the time to live. So when you use the CDN within your application, you can specify that. I recently put out a blog of important Azure changes, and I broke that particular aspect down right here under the cache file settings so that you can understand how you can use this setting to set those TTLs on your CDN much faster, and you can leverage that so that files expire exactly when you want to. Again, it's a little bit more of a technical aspect of it, but it's still something I wanted you to be aware of. The next thing, let's see, I gave myself a couple notes, so hopefully I can come up with a few more. We have, so one thing this actually helps developers too, it's not, I don't think it's necessarily new, but it's a really nice one. It actually will show you all the assigned objects to the site that you're working on. So if you have a site like I do with multiple sites within the same instance, this is really helpful so that you can understand which users are assigned to this site, which ones are not. So it's just another little feature that you can do, and just kind of helps you find information a little bit easier. From a non-technical standpoint, maybe users or polls would be very beneficial to you. So a feature like this would actually give you information much faster. Maybe you wouldn't have to go through a developer's interface to get it if you have access to this area of the site, which please be careful, because if you have access to this area, you can delete everything. But for the knowledgeable user with the appropriate permissions, they would be able to come in here, and maybe they need to know where a particular style sheet is assigned to. You'd actually be able to find that very quickly inside of here. So let's see, the next thing I wanted to go with was we did change some of our SharePoint integration. And if you'll notice down inside of here, we've broken out a good things all inside of our integration area of our settings. And if you notice, we kind of took away the logins that were for SharePoint. I believe it had the URLs and the admin or the user. Now I believe those are within the actual web part that you implement. So we kind of simplified this area of the integration. And so just to kind of limit it and make it a little bit more universal so that way people can integrate it the way they want to, not necessarily have to define. So what this means is this is just kind of the overriding SharePoint file caching information, but it's really when you put the SharePoint web part on your application, you could in theory hit like different SharePoint things because I believe the properties for that SharePoint connection are in the web part itself. So again, it's a small change that just makes it a little more usable and allows them to kind of develop and work with it the way that they need to. So there's a number of other hidden features and kind of small little improvements here and there. We're constantly kind of looking for different ways to kind of make these small improvements. Another one, this actually will probably affect everybody, and this is a pretty big one to me. It's one of the smallest little things, but sometimes it's the smallest things that make your life the easiest. So this is the default dashboard just of all the different applications that you. But let's say that you are a marketer and you really are working in campaigns a lot. If you want to add that to your dashboard, it's now right up here. So if I just click this, I can come in and now I have campaigns right on my dashboard. You don't have to click the little button down here and then go and choose it and go do all the stuff. It's all, you still can do that. This was the previous way to do it. You'd have to come into here. I want to find, blogs. I'm going to pin it, and then now the blogs are on my site and now they're there. I can actually do it straight from that particular application. Another nice thing is if I really want that, I don't have to click that. I can just drag them all around and rearrange them however I want. So it's a small little thing, but it's one that will save you some clicks and just make your life a little bit easier. So it's definitely one I wanted to kind of show everybody as this goes on. So with that, I'm kind of coming to the end of my presentation. So again, this is the links. I'll have them here. I'll get these over to Bryan and the other folks at HiMonkey so that you can get these links very easily. If you want to talk to me, I like to talk. I like to talk to people. I really like to help developers fix problems. You can reach out to me, email, Twitter, Skype, and then it's actually, I don't have it on here for some reason, but on devnet.kentico.com, that's where my blog is. So I blog a lot of things about it. And so you'll find as we publish new information, check out devnet.kentico.com. So with that, Bryan, I'd like to address any questions that maybe have come up and do my best to sound intelligent.
Sure. All right. So one of the ones that came up here was, can the user create new pages off of the page types in the MVC site?
So with the when you have the MVC site, I'm going to jump back over to it because this is my regular one. So I'm going to jump back over to the MVC site. when you come in, you create a new page type of whatever it is. It doesn't really matter what it is. So I'm just going to go through just so you can see what I'm talking about. And I'm just going to make some sample page type. Now this has a lot of page types in it because this installation is holding a regular Kentico site and it's holding the MVC content site. So it has a lot of stuff already in it. And I probably should have hit this page beforehand. But your developers or your development partner or whoever it is, they can come in and they can define page types just as they do anything. I mean, with anything where they define the fields for it and they decide, you know, this is the values of those fields and this is the kind of interface that someone's going to interact with. And I don't know why this is taking so long, so I'm just going to abandon that. And then once they define those, then your content administrators will come into here, and because it's an MVC site, it's only going to show them those content-only types. So if I wanted to come into the articles and I wanted to create a new article, it's the same experience as if you're working in a non-MVC site, because from the Kentico's perspective, it's just a different kind of page type, and it has a specific designation that it is content only, which just tells Kentico how to work with the data and how it's going to be consumed. But yes, they can easily come into here and create a new page within their application, and now it's in the mix just like everything else. And again, if it need to be under workflow, you can apply a workflow to it, bring it in so that it gets covered by a specific workflow, and then it's treated like a normal Kentico application in regards to how that content is managed. If you want a different version of it from a language perspective, you can switch over to Spain, and it's all that stuff still the same. So yes, whether or not that's going to show up here on my thing, it could be cached. We'll see. And I did rebuild that application, so we'll see if it actually pops up, the new one that I added, because the MVC site actually is leveraging caching inside of there. And yeah, so there it is. There's the new one. I didn't add an image for it, so it doesn't like that too much. But yes, they can very quickly use Kentico to add those new pages within the application easily. Any other questions?
All right. Nope, I don't see any other questions. So, I mean, if there aren't any other questions, or maybe if we can give people a minute here to see if there are any questions.
Sure. While we're waiting on those, just to kind of give you a little more information, this is the DevNet site that I mentioned. We have a section here for articles. This is where you're going to find a lot of information about upcoming things. You'll find a lot of me because I blog a lot, basically almost once a week. But you'll also find blogs from our MVPs and then other things that we have. And we kind of broke down some of these different things. I'm trying to find one in particular. So like one about like best practices for working in JavaScript. So it's a really good place for a developer to go. I'm sure most seasoned developers are already familiar with it. There's also a Q&A area where people can ask a question, and then the community itself will give answers. And so you can see we have a lot of contributions. 4 or 5 people respond to a message sometimes. Normally it's Brendan Karen because he just loves answering questions very quickly, but we do have a number of other contributors, so it's a great way to do that. Also, this is really important too, under the documentation, this is where you can find information like the full documentation, all the release notes, tutorials to walk you through it, the methodology, a guide specific to Azure, and the API reference, which really comes into play, especially for a developer. But another nice feature is these API changes. So if you notice, when we go from each version to version, there's often a lot of changes to the API. Sometimes those are more significant than others. Like from 7 to 8 was a huge change for the API because we kind of restructured the way a lot of it was kind of put together and whether or not it was in a helper class or not in a helper class. So there's a lot of changes there. From 8.2 to 9, there's not as many. But if you did have a specific thing, like say an object query, you can actually use this and it will tell you what changes and like how it actually got modified so that you can understand. So for this particular API call, which was, I don't know, whatever this is, get Facebook post infos by document GUID, it was removed, and it's because we found, we'll try to give an explanation, and then we also try to give you some guidance as to what you should use instead. So if you're looking to upgrade, this is a fantastic tool. There is a tool to download as well that's an exe that you run against your site, and you can produce like an Excel file or a CSV of all the areas of your application that have all your custom code that needs to be updated. And if you really want to, there's a switch on that exe that will actually apply the change for you. I'm not a big fan of that. I like just to get the list and I work through it manually, but it's a great way to understand what you need to update in your custom code if you're going to go from one version to the next. So.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to let everybody know that I will get the PowerPoint and the recording of the presentation up on the Kentico User Group site. Again, it's kenticousergroup.org. And yeah, so we've started planning, as I mentioned earlier, for 2016. So again, if you have any topic suggestions or you yourself would be interested, please reach out via that Kentico User Group website. And I'm going to say thanks a lot, Bryan, for joining us today. And I know I really appreciate it, and I'm sure there's a lot of good details here that people can use going forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me, Bryan, and I really appreciate HiMonkey. I mean, I know you guys go through a lot of work to produce this user group, and it's a fantastic resource for the community. And we at Kentico definitely appreciate your enthusiasm and willingness to put on the user group and facilitate it and manage it. And I think you guys do a fantastic job, and I'm honored that you allowed me to speak at it. So thank you.
Absolutely, we're happy to do it. So. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, like I said, I will get those recording and the presentation up there on the website, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time.